While the final handful of NBA teams battle it out to be crowned NBA champions, the Philadelphia 76ers have already turned a page to their offseason. And one interesting player regarding his future outlook is Andre Drummond. Still holding a player option for next season, but after a wildly underwhelming season, is Drummond's future back in Philadelphia? We have an interesting report theorizing that he could be on the trade block. Drummond has been pretty open since the season ended about his desire to return. And again, he does hold the cards with that trade option or with that player option there. And what is important to note about a player option is there's nothing an organization can do. And that is why these guys jump on these deals, that you do have a chance to control your destiny. The Sixers currently have a couple guys in that spot. Kelly Oubre, a key figure who I'm going to reference later. Eric Gordon also with a player option next year. I will get into each of those, but do want to start with the Andre Drummond conversation with a couple interesting reports here. Do want to start off with this headline from my guy Justin Grasso over at Sports Illustrated, who writes with the headline, Pistons tabbed as logical trade destination for Andre Drummond. Would the Pistons be a logical trade destination for Andre Drummond if the Sixers want to move on? We obviously know that he started his career, had his best seasons of his career in Detroit there, and that was when he became the Andre Drummond that we've come to know. He did have that brief pit spot, half a season in Philadelphia, and then last year, not going quite nearly as well as I think either side would hope. Now, to walk through the article as a whole, do want to start off with the first paragraph that writes, heading into the 2025 NBA offseason, the Detroit Pistons don't seem primed to make any major changes. While they'll have some money to spend, retaining some of their free agents seems like the goal. However, making some minor tweaks via the trade market is always an option for Trajan Langdon and the front office. Could a reunion with Andre Drummond be an option for Detroit? Philly Voice's Adam Aronson recently explored a handful of teams who could make sense as a trade destination for the Philadelphia 76ers big man. Unsurprisingly, the Pistons were one of them. And he writes, this being from Sixers Adam here, does an Andre Drummond reunion make sense for the Pistons? Quote, unless they retain old friend Paul Reed, who is set to become a free agent once again this summer, the Pistons will have a vacancy at their third-string center spot. Even with the deficiencies that sunk him this season, Drummond is certainly capable of holding down that role. Perhaps Detroit will once again find itself with some spending power to spare and goes for a well-liked veteran whose return would inspire some nostalgia. Now, to give a little bit on the Andre Drummond story here, I like Andre Drummond quite a bit as a human being. I do think he's a good guy who very much wants to be in Philadelphia and kind of looks at life the right way from a perspective. That I think he came here to Philadelphia specifically with more of the intentions of, I'm taking a step back in my personal career. I'm embracing the leadership side of things, helping a team, comfortable being a backup center, and pretty much none of that came together here. And that was far from Andre's fault here. That was, of course, Joel Embiid not holding up his end of the bargain for how often he was on the court. There was plenty of storylines that went into it, and of course, he battled injuries as well. But there is no way around acknowledging that he was underwhelming last year. And to dive into the full stats for what Drummond brought to the table, 7.3 points, 7.8 rebounds, 1.0 steal, 2.4 fouls per game, did shoot 50% from the floor, 15% from three, and I will give Andre a little credit that bleak second half of the season in which it was some of the least watchable basketball I've ever seen there, him shooting three-pointers was one of the more pleasurable things that I did get to look forward to. So shout out to Andre for that. But when thinking about it from the Pistons perspective here, they already have a pretty significant logjam at the front court minutes, so it would be a bit of a surprise to me. But where it does make sense is this same sort of mindset that he is okay with being more of a mentor figure, and Detroit has certainly leaned in that category. Our good friend Tobias Harris did find his way back to Detroit as well in this past offseason and kind of served that role incredibly well. That they have their core in place, the Cade Cunninghams, the Jaden Ivies, the Jalen Durant. They have some really intriguing kind of young pieces that are growing into, and I do wonder if surrounding Andre Drummond as a part of that vision could be something that could be appealing. For all that I do love Paul Reed and am a fan of watching him play basketball, stability is certainly not a word I would use to describe him or his style of play. And I do think, like, just from an outside perspective here, it did seem like Detroit got a little bit sick of the Paul Reed roller coaster last year. Now, to continue on a bit deeper in this article, do want to pull up this part from Sixers Adam here that writes, following the conclusion of the regular season for the Sixers, Drummond told reporters that he wanted to finish what he started with the Sixers. With a player option looming, all signs are pointing to the veteran big man picking up the option with the intentions of sticking around. However, opting in doesn't guarantee Drummond will spend the entire year with the Sixers. As the 76ers are suddenly looked to start a bit of a youth movement beyond the start group, Drummond doesn't fit the bill like the soon-to-be sophomore Adem Bona does. so far there hasn't been any indication that Drummond wants to move on. The Sixers haven't suggested that they are ready to cut ties with the 31-year-old veteran. If it does come to that, though, it's hard to imagine Drummond wouldn't embrace a move back to Motor City. So while Andre Drummond controls the cards from a player option perspective, that does not necessarily guarantee things, as Daryl Morey has the freedom to still make trades. And take a peek at the salary cap table here. Did want to pull this up, which I think is really important to note. You can see these number figures for each of these guys. Now, Andre Drummond is a $5 million player option. My read on the market, and based on how Andre Drummond performed last year, I don't think he would get that if he was a free agent this season, and I do think the opt-in is more of a let me lock up that dollar figure, and wherever I end up, if it is in Philadelphia or elsewhere, that's what's hitting my bank account there. That is more of the deal here. Slightly different situation for the other two names that are each in this player option market. Starting with Kelly Oubre Jr., who also has been quite open on his desire to get beat back. Now, I think Kelly Oubre gets a much worse rep than he deserves. I know there's quite a few of you in the comments who are not fans of Oubre's work, and I can totally agree to the point that he has played in a larger role than should be best for him. But I don't think Kelly specifically is a guy who can't play a winning role on a contending team. I think if you scale things down, you take some of his responsibilities off his plate that he's had to kind of hoist these past two seasons, things look a little bit different from the Kelly Oubre perspective. I do admire the way that he's bought in defensively, the way that he competes every single night. And even last year when everything was a disaster, I give him credit for being a professional on an every night basis. But I bring him into this conversation to say this is kind of a similar situation. I do think that Kelly Oubre could potentially, in the right situation, get more than that $8.3 million on the open market. That I do think there are teams that could fall in love with his theoretical skill set. He is a little bit of like the 3-and-D guy without the 3 because he is not that great of a shooter, but the dude does make up for it for how good he is in transition, his defensive effort, which has been off the charts better since he got to Philadelphia. And like, I think he's found a real niche as like a dunker spot type guy. It's refreshing from a Sixers perspective to have a dunker spot guy that actually dunks. When we think about the PJ Tucker of the world that we had, Ben Simmons even never really liked to, get aggressive and go around the rim. The fact that Kelly wants to go up there and yam it, I very much appreciate. But when you factor in both these guys together, all of a sudden we're looking at about $13 million. And when you think about the NBA trade implications here, you do have to send out and bring in sort of matching money, and there's more complications than just yet. But if you're talking about packaging these two together, that could get you a decently priced player. Not quite in the Cam Johnson territory yet, but you can get in that kind of mix. And that is sort of the archetype of player I could see this coming together for a deal. Obviously with Detroit, Cam Johnson not a part of that team, but they do have a lot of guys, a lot of young talent that the Sixers could be looking to lean into there. And I did not want to not acknowledge Eric Gordon down below. Kind of a weird situation here. So he does have the player option, obviously. This is something I would be surprised if he does pick up. It was really interesting to me that Daryl Morey mentioned on the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast that he expects Eric Gordon back. My reading of the tea leaves is I thought there was zero chance for that I seemed like he was straight up miserable last year, and rightfully so based on how the season went. But the other little cap implication that I think is important to note here is there is something that could be kind of a win-win for both sides, and that being that Eric Gordon declines the player option. He comes back on a veteran's minimum, and based on how the salary cap has raised, he could make more money and it counts less against the Sixers. So I'm not ruling out that Gordon is back, but if it is, I do think it does come from a declined player option and then that little dance around the cap here. But to bring it back to the Drummond conversation, I did want to highlight just exactly that I'm not just being sour on him. When there is a number to know, I did want to pull this up from Sixers Adam here, that the number to know for Andre Drummond, his net rating of negative 15.5 last year. And it writes, this is not only the worst figure of Drummond's career and one of the worst marks in the NBA this season, but nearly triple his previous career worst point differential per 100 possessions. Is the accumulation of every negative factor imaginable. Drummond's aforementioned lack of offensive utility, his continued decline on the defensive end of the floor, and perhaps just as much of those individual flaws, the fact that the Sixers were more often than not fielding a poor team. Drummond was quickly usurped in the Sixers' center depth chart by power forward in Gershon Yabusele, and at the end of the season, it was clear that rookie center Adem Bona had a far better chance of being a contributor than Drummond does moving forward. To be fair, Drummond has excitedly campaigned for Yabusele and mentored Bona, part of why he remained a valuable presence in the locker room this season. So, very good intel there, as always, from Sixers Adam, but I do think the fair outlook for Andre Drummond, I'm appreciative of him. I do like him as a human being. I do think he's had some high highs as a basketball player. Certainly had his peak moments there, but I don't think that the future is necessarily aligned with Philadelphia. Would it surprise me if the season starts and he's here? Absolutely not. But I do see a world where Daryl Morey looks at this as more of a trade chip in the middle of the season. But I do think when establishing this depth chart, and obviously we still got a lot of offseason still to go, a guy like a Dembona, I think, starts next season with a higher spot or a cleaner path to opportunity. And of course, Joel Embiid going to continue to be the X factor there. And if that doesn't even factor in if they do take a swing on another young guy in the second round with a 35th pick or bring in another veteran or whatever the case may be. So a lot of different directions they could go with this, but it does feel to me that the time that Andre Drummond has spent in Philadelphia may be coming to an end there. But let me know what you guys think about all that and sort of your view on Drummond from here. Is this a guy that you would welcome back in Philadelphia? Do you want him in a Sixers uniform next year, or is it time for this breakup to go down? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning in. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video here. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.